Hello and welcome to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, your weekly dose of the top pro-life news and issues, all from a Catholic perspective. I am your host, Catherine Hadro, in our Washington, D.C. studio. Thank you for joining us. We begin our broadcast with the major pro-life news coming out of Alabama. Alabama Governor Kay Ivey signed into law last week the Human Life Protection Act, banning nearly all abortions in the state. This new law makes committing or attempting an abortion a felony in Alabama, unless the abortion is committed, quote, in order to prevent a serious health risk to the unborn child's mother. There are no exceptions for victims of rape or incest. The bill's passage was followed by hysteria from media figures and pro-abortion groups who claimed it would criminalize women. However, the bill specifically states a woman who undergoes an abortion, quote, will not be held criminally culpable or civilly liable for receiving the abortion. President Donald Trump, while not naming Alabama, weighed in on Twitter, calling himself strongly pro-life with the three exceptions: rape, incest, and protecting the life of the mother. The Human Life Protection Act is slated to go into effect in 6 months. Joining us now to discuss this news is Bishop Robert Baker of the Diocese of Birmingham, Alabama. He joins us from our EWTN headquarters in Irondale, Alabama. Your Excellency, thank you for being with us.
Great to be with you, Catherine.
This new pro-life law is putting Alabama in the nation's spotlight right now. First off, what is your reaction to the Human Life Protection Act becoming law?
I think it's a great step forward for the pro-life movement throughout the country and world. I'm happy to see the people of Alabama generally supporting this. While there's a lot of opposition shown publicly through the media, I believe the majority of people of Alabama support what happened on May 15th and then that law being signed by Governor Ivey. And I personally endorse the law 100%.
The Human Life Protection Act does not include exceptions for rape and incest. There is debate over this, and we're seeing even from people who identify as pro-life, including the President of the United States, say they do not support a pro-life bill if it does not include exceptions. But Your Excellency, can you clarify, where does the Catholic Church stand on this and the issue of exceptions?
Well, doesn't it make sense that once one acknowledges that life begins at conception, that really there are no exceptions to that reality that is a human life. So up to now, politicians have somewhat compromised on the issue of rape and incest. I laud the Alabama legislators for raising the issue. Why? Because that still is an infant in the womb. So obviously, if you acknowledge life, then you'll support omitting that protection that has been in most laws throughout our country. So it seems extreme, but if you really look at it carefully, it's a very logical conclusion, and one that, of course, is controversial because up to now, nobody but Alabama has done this. So I stand behind the decision and the arguments in favor of not making exceptions for rape or incest.
From what you've seen in the media coverage surrounding this bill, what has been, in your opinion, the most egregious instance of misinformation?
Well, I think people are occasionally misrepresenting this law. They don't even use the title Human Life Protection Act because that's exactly what it is. So they'll just refer to HB 314. And they also will sometimes just make a vague reference to the criminalizing of the act, referring to it as a Class A, Class C felony, Class A for those who perpetrate the act, Class C for those who attempt it, failing to say the punishment only goes to the physician who performs or attempts to perform the act, not the woman or the parents involved.
That's an important clarification. Thank you. Abortion advocates seem to be painting Alabama as the most backwards state because of this law. What's your response to that type of portrayal?
It's misinformation and a false insinuation. I think it's a very enlightened law by very enlightened legislators, and if you read it carefully, The arguments are in there that have been given for years by pro-life advocates that stem from the reality of the rights to life by all people, which are suggested in the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights. So if all have those rights to life, then certainly the unborn have them as well. So, but the document is crafted carefully. I suggest all our listeners and viewers read it because it is clear pro-life thinking, and the arguments that we present commonly are all in this document. It was crafted by people who know the arguments that stem from natural law.
And finally, Your Excellency, the topic of abortion and rape exceptions is an incredibly emotionally charged issue. As a shepherd, what do you want to say to your flock with your state being in the center of this debate?
Well, I've already written on this to my people in my diocesan paper. First of all, if we criticize politicians rightly for voting pro-abortion, and they should be criticized because they're held to the moral law as all people are, then we should laud the people who take the stand to defend human life, which these legislators of Alabama did. So I laud them. I tell my people, back these people, because they were courageous in making the statement. And also the Governor Ivey. When a politician, a legislator, a leader does right, we should commend them and thank them. So shower them with your letters of approval as I extend my own personal approval for them. And once again, legislators have an even graver moral responsibility to protect life than the average citizen does. So they're held by God morally responsible for their actions. But they're also praised and should be praised by all pro-life people for the kind of actions that we saw here in Alabama by our Senate and House leaders. God bless them, and continue to be of support with your prayers for these noble leaders.
Bishop Robert Baker of the Diocese of Birmingham, Alabama, thank you so much for joining us and for your leadership.
Thank you, Catherine. A joy to be with you.
We continue this conversation now in our DC studio with Autumn Christensen, the Policy Director for the Susan B. Anthony List. Thanks for being here, Autumn.
Thank you.
A lot to discuss. First off, what is your reaction to the Human Life Protection Act being signed into law?
Yeah, you know, I think this is an example of Americans just sort of stepping up and saying, look, in my state, we're going to defend unborn children. They have watched the World Trade Center turn pink for late-term abortion. They have heard a governor defending infanticide. They have heard members of Congress in Washington blocking legislation to give health care to babies who survive abortion, and they've just said this is enough, at least in their states. They're going to take action.
Abortion advocates and many in the media are portraying this bill as anti-woman, an attack on women. What's your response to that?
Well, you know, first I always think about all of those unborn baby girls who will never have a chance to grow into womanhood, and nobody seems to want to talk about them. And then you kind of see these images pop up on screens of the male legislators who are stepping up to protect babies. And conveniently omitted is the author of the bill, who's a female member, Terry Collins from Alabama, and the Governor, Kay Ivey, who signed the bill into law, women who know that you can protect women's rights and babies' rights at the same time.
We really have seen a flurry of pro-life legislation these past few weeks. Can you give us a sense of the pro-life movement right now? How pivotal of a time is this?
You know, I think that there's just a lot of energy. Americans want, according to our polling, they want their lawmakers to make laws regarding abortion. They don't want these things decided by courts. So they're looking for opportunities to protect unborn life, and they're responding to the extremism they're seeing in other places. And their lawmakers are responding and saying, hey, before we adjourn, we're going to get some work done to protect babies.
And we have seen over-the-top reaction ranging from Saturday Night Live to other Hollywood figures. What do you make of the hysteria surrounding the pro-life laws?
Yeah, the media centers in California and New York just never cease to stop pushing their abortion agenda, and this time they're using so-called humor and economic really techniques to try to bully pro-life Americans. And I think that we know that we won't be derailed from our efforts to protect babies regardless of the bullying that's coming out of Hollywood.
That's right, we will stand strong. Autumn Christensen, Policy Director for the Susan B. Anthony List. Thank you.
Thanks.
Alabama recently passed the Human Life Protection Act, banning nearly all abortions in the state. Hollywood, pro-abortion groups, and many in the media are lining up to attack the pro-life law and the lawmakers who passed it. Right now, it's important for pro-life lawmakers to know we, the pro-life movement, stand with them. That brings us to this week's call to action. Go to ProLifeWeekly.com and sign our petition to say you stand with Alabama. While abortion advocates are painting this law as an attack against women, we know that this was a bill introduced by State Representative Terry Collins, a woman, and signed into law by Governor Kay Ivey, a woman. We know the truth and that every life is worth protecting without exception. In the wake of attacks and misinformation, sign our petition so Alabama pro-life lawmakers know that we support them. We are not ashamed to be on the side of life and protection for our most vulnerable. Show your support and say you stand with Alabama by signing our petition at ProLifeWeekly.com. In the wake of the new Alabama law, we've heard from a lot of voices, but one voice seems to be missing from the conversation. Rebecca Kiessling is the founder and president of Save the One. She joins us now from Rochester Hills, Michigan. Thank you for being with us, Rebecca.
Thank you so much for having me.
First off, can you share with our viewers a little bit about your witness and your story?
I was conceived when my birth mother was abducted at knife point by a serial rapist. She was happy to meet me when I was 19, but she told me that if abortion had been legal, she would have aborted me. She said it should have been my right, and she was adamantly pro-choice. She later shared that she actually went to 2 illegal abortions, and I was almost aborted. And I absolutely owe my birth to the law which protected me. It was the back alley conditions and the fact that it was illegal that caused her to back out. And she changed her choice, as they say, 6 years after we met. And now, 30 years later, we are both so thankful that we were protected by Michigan law at the time.
Thank you so much for your vulnerability and sharing that. And Rebecca, that being said, what is your reaction then to Alabama's Human Life Protection Act, which has no rape exception?
Well, I was very thankful that Terry Collins really went to bat for us. She absolutely defended our lives, so did the lieutenant governor. But it hurts hearing all of the rhetoric ever since. We saw, by the way, the heartbeat bill pass in Kentucky and Ohio with no exceptions, but then it passed in Georgia with the rape exception, just like Iowa did last year. So we plan to sue the state of Georgia for those exceptions, just like we did with Iowa. We have a global network now with Save the One of 800 of us conceived in rape and mothers from rape. And the other so-called hard cases, we have hundreds. That were told by doctors to abort. So we will fight back, and it really hurts when our people group are under attack.
What was your reaction to President Trump's announcement on Twitter that he is pro-life with exceptions, including exceptions for rape?
Well, he is the most pro-life president we've had by far. And, you know, sadly, that's not saying a lot because the Republicans have not been very good at the SCOTUS appointments. I'm an attorney. I write about the subject a lot, and they're not even at 50%. And I don't even know if the ones that are supposedly pro-life that are willing to regulate will actually overturn Roe v. Wade. But he's done a great job. I mean, he's done a lot for the pro-life movement. He really has, far more than anybody else. And so it hurts so much more. Because, you know, you want somebody like that to be willing to defend you. And it's tough. I mean, I was able to change the heart of Governor Rick Perry and Newt Gingrich during their presidential campaigns. But I haven't had the opportunity to meet with President Trump. A lot of people tried to set that up, but just haven't had the chance.
This is a particularly sensitive issue to discuss. Rebecca, what advice do you have for our viewers when speaking about pro-life laws, and particularly when there are no exceptions for rape victims?
Well, first of all, we want to appreciate people's concern for rape victims who become pregnant. My dearest friends in life went through that. So please be concerned for their welfare and acknowledge the fact that others are concerned. But there's a lot of myths that, the child's a horrible reminder. That's far from true. I hate being called the rapist child. My birth mother hates that. I am the child of a rape victim. But people purposely choose to characterize me otherwise, and we get demonized. We get called demon seed, Satan spawn. I heard a new one today. We're called a rape trophy. So please dispel those myths. Don't use that term, rapist child. Please use child of a rape victim. We actually have a 5-state study done on messaging, and number one, the best messaging is to put a face to the issue. Tell the story of a woman who was conceived in rape or who became pregnant by rape, and then appeal to the sense of justice, that we do not punish innocent people for someone else's crime. People respect that answer, and I did not deserve the death penalty for the crime of my biological father.
Absolutely. Rebecca, you are also a lawyer. From a legal standpoint, do you foresee pro-life laws that do not include exceptions being enforceable in the courts?
Actually, in footnote 54 of the U.S. Supreme Court's opinion in Roe v. Wade, under the personhood discussion, the court pointed out the fact that Texas had exceptions and exemptions, and how that undermined the state's whole argument for personhood. The 14th Amendment says that no state shall deny a person equal protection. So you actually have a stronger challenge to Roe v. Wade when you have no exceptions.
And finally, Rebecca, tell us about your group, Save the One, and the work you are doing, including to protect victims of rape.
Well, I'm a family law attorney, so over the past 12 years, I've been working hard on the Rape Survivor Child Custody Act, along with many of our members, to protect rape victims and their children from the rapist having parental rights. When we first started, there was only one state that used the clear and convincing evidence standard to terminate parental rights, which is the normal standard in any other type of termination of parental rights case. And we only had 17 states when we first started that had any kind of law, and now there's only 4 states left. So we've made a lot of progress in court. I've represented rape victim mothers for free and successfully got the parental rights of the rapist terminated. I've also litigated numerous high-profile cases defending human life. And so I tell people, look, if you really care about rape victims who become pregnant, please protect them from the rapist and from the abortion. The baby is not the scary enemy.
Rebecca Kiessling, president and founder of Save the One, thank you so much for joining us. I know this is not an easy topic to discuss, so thank you.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
When we come back,
we had worked for 3 or 4 years in preparation of the movie coming out, and so our hope is, I hope we get more volunteers because the campaign is featured in a major motion picture.
Hear how the Unplanned movie impacted the most recent 40 Days for Life campaign from the very man who was portrayed in the film. Stay tuned as EWTN Pro-Life Weekly continues after this break. Welcome back to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. I'm your host, Catherine Hadro. Alabama passed the Human Life Protection Act, and all-out hysteria has broken out. That's this week's Speak Out segment. Hollywood and the entertainment industry quickly painted the pro-life law as if it was the end of the world. Actress Amber Tamblyn tweeted, quote, Good morning, women. Make no mistake, this is war. Actor Jim Carrey tweeted a cartoon depiction of Alabama Governor Kay Ivey being aborted herself. That is so gruesome. We don't feel comfortable showing it to you on air. And on Saturday Night Live, cast member Leslie Jones donned a Handmaid's Tale costume and then launched into a rage-filled monologue that misleadingly depicted the bill only being supported by men.
You can't control women because, I don't know if y'all heard, but women are the same as humans.
Let me just first off say, as a woman, I agree that no one should control a woman's body. But the same human rights afforded to women need to be granted to the smallest in our population as well, the unborn. My rights to control my body end when a new body begins. These media reactions we showed you were just a small sample of the reactions we saw to Alabama's Human Life Protection Act. There was widespread outrage and widespread misinformation. This past weekend, I was grateful to sit down with CNN's Brian Stelter on his show, Reliable Sources, and explain the media bias from a pro-life perspective, and to clarify misinformation that is out there, including the fact that the bill will not criminalize women who undergo abortions, only the abortionists. Do not fall for the hysteria that the abortion lobby is cultivating. Instead, look at the facts, read the actual text of the bills, and you will see it's the pro-life movement that continues to be on the side of peace and truth. Remember, there is something you can do to counter today's culture of death by following this week's call to action. Go to prolifeweekly.com to sign our petition and say you stand with Alabama. We know the recent pro-life movie Unplanned made a splash at the box office, but what kind of impact did it have on the sidewalks outside of abortion facilities? We hear firsthand in this week's Pro-Life Focus.
We're the sunshine on the sidewalk. Everything we can offer them, from parenting support and adoption, is always going to be better than coming into this place here.
Pro-lifers are the faith, hope, and love on the outside of abortion centers.
Nobody grows up wanting an abortion. Nobody grows up wanting to work in the abortion industry. Doctors don't go to medical school with the goal to be the best abortion doctor.
Sean Carney is the president and CEO of 40 Days for Life, an international group that prays for an end to abortion through peaceful vigil outside of abortion centers throughout their 40-day spring and fall campaigns. They've saved over 16,000 unborn lives over the years, and Carney even had a hand in pro-life leader Abby Johnson's departure from her job as a Planned Parenthood clinic director. It was the same clinic where he would routinely pray outside.
It was such a beautiful thing to get to be a part of how God worked in Abby's life. I mean, if she can become pro-life, anybody can become pro-life.
Their relationship was recently depicted in the film Unplanned, where Carney saw himself portrayed on the big screen.
Abby Johnson is in the other room.
Here. It's a unique story that needs to be told. Abby Johnson's, she got to ride both sides of this fence, and that's just an amazing thing. And being able to be a part of that is awesome as an actor, storyteller.
And that true story surprised opening weekend, landing within the top 5 films at the box office. 40 Days for Life says they had a behind-the-scenes role, from reviewing the script for accuracy to buying out 300 theaters ahead of the premiere. But beyond the box office, 40 Days tells us they've seen success straight from the screens to the sidewalks. Tell us about the latest 40 Days for Life campaign. What were some of the highlights and successes?
Well, it was awesome. It was our largest spring campaign ever, 377 cities. And we had worked for 3 or 4 years in preparation of the movie coming out. And so our hope is, I hope we get more volunteers because the campaign is featured in a major motion picture. It certainly would have been disappointing if that wasn't the case. But it was overwhelming. I mean, it wasn't a few days or weeks after the movie was released. It was literally the night of the release of Unplanned on Friday night. We saw a huge increase in people physically leaving theaters and going out to one of our 377 locations. Overall, We've gathered all the data. It's been a 30% increase in participation in 40 Days for Life.
The campaign says they know the movie has even been life-saving.
There was one young woman who was scheduled to have an abortion at a Planned Parenthood on a Saturday, and instead she went to the movie on a Friday and decided she wasn't going to have the abortion, and instead actually went out and participated in the prayer vigil in front of the place where she was scheduled to have an abortion.
Carney believes the Unplanned movie had a positive impact because it shows the heart of the pro-life movement.
Unplanned put a spotlight on the nitty-gritty part of it, which is going out in the rain and in the cold and in the heat and praying for an end to abortion and sort of normalizing that as something very basic that we as Christians ought to do. And they did a great job of that in the movie, and there's no doubt that had a positive impact on sidewalks across America.
With their next campaign launching in the fall, 40 Days for Life is praying it will be their biggest yet. If you want to stay up to date for the next 40 Days for Life campaign, go to 40daysforlife.com. That does it for this edition of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. We'll see you next week. Until then, I'd love to hear from you. You can email us at prolifeweekly@ewtn.com or look for us all over social media. Just search for EWTN Pro-Life. And remember, life is a gift. Your life is a gift. God bless.